This video has been released under Section 25 of the Transport Safety Investigation Act 2003 and contains accident scene footage which may upset some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The ATSB has published its final report into the mid-air collision at Caboolture Airfield, a non-towered aerodrome with two intersecting runways just north of Brisbane in Queensland. On the morning of the 28th of July 2023, the sole pilot of a Piper PA-25 Pawnee was returning to land on runway 06 after towing a glider into the air. Just prior to touching down, a Cessna 172 being taxied by a solo student pilot, unaware of an aircraft on approach, taxied across runway 06 ahead of the landing Pawnee. On seeing this, the Pawnee pilot initiated a go-around, which is a routine procedure when an aircraft encounters a problem on landing. After making a go-around radio call, the Pawnee began to climb, maintaining the runway 06 heading. At this time, a Jabiru J430 with two occupants on board was taking off from the intersecting runway 11 on a private flight. As the two aircraft converged, the Jabiru commenced a left turn, likely in an attempt to avoid a collision. Tragically, the two aircraft collided above runway 06, just beyond the intersection, at a height of about 130 feet. The collision separated the right wingtip and aileron from the Jabiru, which pitched downward and rolled to the right before colliding with terrain, fatally injuring both occupants and destroying the aircraft. The Pawnee sustained substantial damage to its left wing in the collision, but remained flyable and landed safely with no injuries to the pilot. The investigation found that while in the circuit, the Pawnee pilot had made positional radio calls and a radio call stating their intention to land and hold short of the runway intersection. The Pawnee pilot did not hear an entering runway or rolling call from the Jabiru. Based on the Jabiru pilot's apparent unawareness of the Pawnee until just before the collision, and most witnesses not recalling hearing any calls from the Jabiru throughout the event, it is likely that the Jabiru pilot could not transmit or hear radio calls. Neither pilot was aware of the other aircraft when using their respective runways. A stand of trees between the runways prevented the Pawnee and Jabiru pilots from being able to see one another's aircraft once the Jabiru had taxied onto the runway.
Although in this instance, the Jabiru and Pawnee pilots were both familiar with the aerodrome and its line of sight limitations, we found that the aerodrome operator did not effectively manage or inform pilots of the risk of trees and buildings around the aerodrome, which prevented pilots seeing each other's aircraft on approach paths and intersecting runways. The local gliding club would regularly use runway 06 for its first flights of the day due to its proximity to the glider hangars, and also later in the day when winds and traffic were light, including during periods when traffic was generally using the intersecting runway. Using an intersecting runway increased the collision risk, as Caboolture was a non-controlled aerodrome relying on alerted see and avoid principles. This risk was exacerbated by the trees which blocked both pilots' sightlines.
This accident demonstrates that following the existing regulations, rules of the air, and associated guidance does not completely overcome the risks inherent in using multiple runways concurrently. These risks are affected by a range of factors such as visual obstructions and runway layout that differ widely across operations and aerodromes and can change over time.
We found that the regulatory guidance pilots relied upon when using non-controlled aerodromes like Caboolture did not clearly define what was considered the active runway, leaving room for different interpretations. Further, this guidance did not provide practical advice to pilots using a secondary runway, and in some cases this advice was contrary to existing regulations.
Self-separation around aerodromes, relying on see and avoid principles, is not infallible. Pilots can mitigate this by establishing two-way communication with other traffic, being mindful of the potential for radio communications to be missed or misinterpreted, and never assuming a runway is safe to use simply because no other aircraft are visible.
Following our investigation, CASA is removing all references to the term active runway to better align guidance with the regulations and avoid confusion, and will also expand the guidance to assist the industry in understanding this issue. As a result of this occurrence, the aerodrome operator has now prohibited simultaneous runway operations and has mandated takeoff radio calls.
You can read the final report into the investigation on our website by searching AO-2023-036 via the link below or from the link in our bio.